Okay, so vintage new old stock Rubbermaid. We have quite a bit to get through. We're going to be talking about what sold in our online reselling business for the first 2 weeks of September. And I tried to just mostly pick the highlights from eBay. I'll eventually get back to just doing a week at a time, but I'm still trying to play catch up a little bit. So a lot of bread and butter sales those 2 weeks, but I just shared some of the fun stuff with you. But vintage, if you didn't know, vintage Rubbermaid, new old stock items can be worth picking up. I think I paid 99 cents for this at Goodwill, and it sold for $28 within a couple of weeks. Moving over, we also have a good thing to keep an eye out for by Black & Decker. Now, a lot of the Space Maker stuff is things that you want to look for, especially if it's new in the box. And this was a Space Maker can opener, knife sharpener kind of thing. It was part of, I don't remember where it says it, but it was like a slimline version of it or something like that. It was something just a little bit different, I think, space-saving design. I don't know where I got the whole slimline thing. It was something slightly different than the normal one, I think, unless we have another one that is what I'm thinking about. So never mind. Anyway, this sold for $80. Mr. Pish Posh found this we were at a thrift store, and he found it like way up on a top shelf. And so that's where it pays to have someone taller than you at thrift stores. Okay, so I just decided to share this this vest with you. I picked it up at a yard sale this summer for $4. And see, I really should have used one of the velvet hangers, because it's got a little jagged thing in there. I hate that. Okay, I'm just noticing that now. Anyway, so this is just a vintage vest that I picked up. I picked it up because it was lamb's wool. It wasn't like any particular brand or anything like that, but these classic kind of heritage looks usually do pretty well. This sold for $30. Again, fairly quickly, and I think all it had on it was the wool mark, made in Hong Kong. I could tell it was vintage, and that academia kind of look is really popular right now, so I decided to grab that. I also wanted to share these earrings, these Monet, I had called them statement earrings, very 80s, big red color, and they sold for that full asking price of $24.99. A lot of the things selling are things that had been in my Ruby Lane shop that I have moved over, and so they're actually selling fairly quickly with the increased audience on eBay. This was a fun thrift store find. It was made in Denmark, and it was signed Lev Kari. Oh, I finally figured that out because I could make out the Kari part, and then I realized it was Lev, L-E-V, Denmark. I think I paid up a little bit, $8 or so for this at a thrift store, just locally, but just so cool. And it actually sold probably within the day I listed it. I took a $34 offer on that and was happy to move that through, get it to a collector. Maybe they'll polish up the beak a little bit, maybe not. It's a bottle opener, in case I didn't say that earlier. Anyway, just sharing, it's kind of a basic sale. This sold for, I think, $24. It was $25. It's just a Cole Haan leather and fabric belt. Just decided to throw that one in there. Can't remember why. Here was a pair of shoes that I found. I actually found these at Goodwill, and I think I paid like $10 for them. They're Vans, but they are a collaboration with NASA, or however you want to say that. And they had these cool little patches and things like that on them. I took a $40 offer in a few weeks after listing. They didn't have shoelaces. I didn't bother. It wasn't worth finding the laces. In this particular case, we just decided to just throw them on there and see what we got for them. They were a men's 8.5. And so that was the smaller size would be, a little bit harder to move anyway. So $40 maybe a bigger size with laces, could have gone a little bit higher. Okay, then I was sharing some of these patterns that I sold, and you guys know I do have a pattern shop on Etsy, and I do for the most part put most of my patterns on there. I think it was a week where I just wanted some cash flow. I was trying to move some things and list some things that I thought hopefully would sell a little bit faster. And I've had good success with posting like really vintage patterns on eBay. The collectors are there as well. Like these would sell on Etsy, but I thought maybe the eBay buyers would see these faster. So I just decided I was in the mood for it. I dove into, I had bought like a woman's pattern collection years ago during pandemic. And some of the best patterns in there were these old nurse uniforms. She had a collection of them. And so I still have a few listed. And then they all required like checking the pieces and making sure they're complete and all that. And you know me, anytime a work like that gets postponed. So I just decided, I felt like doing it one day. And so I pulled those out and got a handful of them listed. So here's the first one that sold, $34.99. This one was actually missing a piece, but it's a belt, and most seamstresses can figure that out, or they're just collecting the pattern anyway. So, okay. Just not super valuable on this. It's just a little dish, but anything enamel on copper, I'm all over that. And this was Anne Marie Davidson. I'll show you the label at the bottom. Underneath her little mark, it's a California artist, but nice colors on this, no damage, no chips in the enamel or anything. And so I sold that for $25. Then Flatware. Speaking of Flatware, I just wanted to share the fact that on my trip, I bought no Flatware. You guys are going to be shocked, but I really didn't see anything that tempted me. You know, and at one point I mentioned it to Mr. Pishposh. I'm like, I haven't found any Flatware. And he's like, that's okay. And I was like, all right, let's not go there, Mr. Lego. But anyway, we were talking about, there was Flatware, like I would come across it, but I didn't come across anything that I probably don't already have like sitting at home. So like if I had found some really good Flatware or something, no brainer, easy peasy, I would have grabbed it, but I really just wasn't feeling it. So anyway, I didn't add to my stash, and but so I'm just sharing a Flatware sale. I didn't have a ton of Flatware sales those 2 weeks. But this is Robert Welch Meridian. They're the larger soup spoon or tablespoons or place spoons or whatever you guys want to call them. Those just sold for $18.99, and they went internationally. I don't sell Flatware often internationally, sometimes to Canada, sometimes to the UK. That's about it. Okay, Butterick. Another old pattern, $24. I took an offer on this one, a 1940s nurse's uniform. The nice thing about this one was its size. It was a size 20 with a bust of 38, which they're harder to come by in older patterns, those larger sizes. These earrings sold for $31.49. They were sterling, they were Navajo. There are websites online where you can identify the marks on Southwest Navajo Native American jewelry. And so I figured out that these were Della and Francis James, and they had been on Ruby Lane, and once I moved them over, they sold fairly quickly on eBay. Okay, so I was just sharing, you guys have seen these Spice Garden jars by Lennox like over and over again in my what sold videos, but it just, once I saw it, I was like, I haven't sold one in a while. I don't even know what's still listed, and so I better look, and I'm gonna do that this afternoon. And if things have been listed a few months, they tend to start dropping off a little bit in visibility, and so I think I'll maybe bump them up, end them, relist them. I don't know. I'm gonna see how long they've been listed and if they've been getting any interest or attention lately. I don't even know how many are left. That's a good question. Have not thought about them in a minute. And then I just thought I'd share these fun flip-flops. The brand is Hot Flops. These were in our garage stash way too long. We even got shipping instructions from the buyer. They only sold for $15, but she was very clear about how she wanted them packaged. Just fun little flip-flops. I think they needed like cleaning, like Mr. Pish Posh just used the air compressor to kind of blow out dust and things like that. So finally got them listed, sold this pair. Anyway. Nice mug sale. This sold for $25. Heartstone is a brand I usually look out for. I'll show you the bottom. It's just an incised mark. Let me see. Here we go. That looks better. It's kind of got that hand or paw print, or I guess it's a hand. Heartstone. They're usually from the 90s. There was a couple collabs with Heartstone and Starbucks way back in the day. Those can sell pretty well. This one was just a pattern that I couldn't really come across any others, so I figured someone would want it. It's winter coming up and such, so that sold for $25. And here's another one of the older patterns. This one actually sold for $45. Men's patterns can do that. They can sell for a little bit more because there's not as many of them out there. So this technician jacket, you know, for a doctor, a dentist, whatever. Let's see. I think printed pieces, cut but complete. The envelope had a lot of wear. Okay, so it had all the pieces, so that's the important thing. The condition of the envelope was not that great, but it still sold for $45. Next up, Ralph Lauren. Check this out. This sold for $60. As you can see on there, it didn't take an offer or anything like that. I found this I have a bin in my garage of clothing I had picked up in the past that somehow ended up out there. And I was like, oh, I better look through these. And this was very fall. It was like a brown velvet. And again, those keywords, academia, it's just a very on-trend kind of style right now. And Ralph Lauren, anything Ralph Lauren seems to be having a moment again. It's kind of always been around. There's certain pieces that have always done super well, like the teddy bear and things like that. But it's just like people can't get enough of it right now. And if you can find vintage pieces, all the better, right? So I have a few sales in this video that I'll show you that we had happened to come across, some pieces that were vintage and some not so vintage, but all sold really quickly. So I didn't even know where to price this vest. It was a size medium. And anyway, Ralph Lauren, and it sold for $60. This was probably one of the oldest listings in my Ruby Lane shop, and I had always meant to like redo it or to change something up just because I felt like there was no real easy way on Ruby Lane to like sell similar to like, to do something with it to kind of bump it. You'd have to just make a whole new listing, and I just never did that to any of my listings on there. So this one had been on there for quite a while, and sure enough, move it to eBay, bigger audience, more collectors, and it sold for $22. So I probably had my price pretty high. There was a few years back where any kind of satin jewelry was getting really good prices, satin gold, like that matte gold tone. Statement 90s statement necklaces. I think the prices are coming down a little bit. And so I just have to not ask quite so much unless it's like an amazing piece. Then next up, these were fun. I found a bunch of these bowls at the my local little clearance store, my bins. So these are little dessert and sauce mixed together is DeSauce. These little bowls, and they weren't even quite that little, they were for the pattern in general, they were the smallest bowl. But anyway, I looked at comps real quick in the store because I didn't want to bring home dishware just to bring home dishware. And the comps were really good, and I was like, sweet. So I grabbed these, and then there were bigger cereal bowls, so I just brought those home. And the pattern was called Antique White. It was right on the bottom. And these sold really quickly. So all the bowls that I brought home, I divided them into several different lots, and I just sold the last bowl yesterday. So this is beginning of September. It's like mid-October, so all the bowls went really fast. So I really love that. And these sold for $64.99. You know, I'm not picking up all Mikasa dinnerware. You can't do that. You have to just kind of look case by case. I think this was another bins find. It was a Deneen pottery mug. It was just from 2023. I love Public Lands. It was the Public Lands Alliance. And I took an offer for, I think, $18.74. Minnetonka. So these used to sell like really, really fast, really well. I'm a little pickier now when I pick up Minnetonka moccasins, but these were in such good condition. They also had this little extra like feather, concho tassel kind of thing. And so my lights just went out and they just came back on again. Alrighty. I wonder if that was... They've been doing some work out here. So hopefully we keep our power a little bit longer. Okay, so these, like I said, they were in really good condition. I check the bottoms. People like to wear these as slippers. Let's see if my internet is still connected. Uh-oh. Okay, here it is. It's still working. Okay, so let's move on to this pair of Gramici corduroy belted pants. I use that keyword Gorpcore for hiking and such outdoor clothing. Gramici is usually connected to like climbing clothing. These were vintage. These were given to us, and they, I think we took an offer, let me find it, $40.99, or we sent an offer or something like that. And I don't pick up everything Gramici anymore. I'm a lot pickier, but the pants generally do pretty well, especially with the climbing look with that like nylon belt and everything. Those seem to still do pretty well. Here's another Ralph Lauren sale that sold for $45. These vintage cotton chino pants, and even pleated. They had side buckles. You know, they were pretty 90s looking. And those sold for $45 within a couple days. You can see the older label on there. Okay. So this was fun. This was aftershave lotion by Fabergé, and the brand, or the name of the fragrance is Aphrodisia for men. Anyway, I took a $48 offer on that. I picked it up at a yard sale for $1. So first offer that came in, got it. And then this is one of those fun things that I just will never stop being tickled about, finding something like this at our clearance store that nobody is looking at. Well, I won't say nobody, but hardly anyone is looking at. It was just a folder sitting there on the shelf, and I opened it up, and it looked like this, right? And I was like, oh, that's some kind of file, flat file kind of thing. So I think I did look up Victor. It was called a Cardex. Anyway, I think I looked it up in the store. You know, I'm trying to be good about that, not just because stuff is super cheap at the bins to not just fill up my garage even more. But it took a while, maybe a couple months, but it did sell for $39.99. And then, woohoo, another Ralph Lauren. This one had sat around in my pile for a while, and I can't remember. I think it just needed ironing, like the placket was, you know, like most ironing I do is just throwing something into the dryer on wrinkle release and then hanging it up. But I think the placket needed like ironing, right? And so it had just been sitting around, and we were looking at it, and it's a black label. Okay, so it's not the top Ralph Lauren label, but it's not quite Polo Ralph Lauren. I saw something recently that the black label is not really that exciting, but anything black label I have found seems to do okay. Now, this definitely had style in its favor, okay? So it was chambray. It was a little bit distressed, faded. It was Western style. It was pearl snap, all that kind of stuff that's people love. And it sold for $70. So fun stuff. Makes me want to go thrifting and find more Ralph Lauren stuff right now. Okay, so sorry there, I had a little glitch with my recording, so I'm going to finish off this video without my camera and just see if that helps. I lost a whole half of a video that I already recorded, so let's just redo this real quickly. We're going to talk about the sales on Poshmark, and these were all the sales that I had in that 2-week period at the beginning of September, because there really weren't that many. But Skechers Yoga Foam Rhinestone Sandals sold for $24. I'm pretty sure I just picked these up at the bins because that's where I usually pick up such things. They were in good condition, which is why I grabbed them. This was just a little organizer, Philippe Amiel. It was listed a while on eBay, cross-posted it to Posh and things like that. And then finally, someone picked it up for $19. Here's another Polo Ralph Lauren piece. This one is a more modern piece, as you can see from the label. It's more of a modern label. I think I did check comps. I found this at Goodwill, and I picked it up because the size was pretty good, XXL. It's just cotton blend, not a big deal, but it sold for $34. And another Ralph Lauren piece sold that week for $25. And this shirt I did have listed for a really long time. It was Lauren, like I said, Ralph Lauren. It was a newer, I'm pretty sure it was a newer piece. And I don't generally pick up like all Ralph Lauren, although I might start doing so soon. It usually has to have some kind of like feature or be a bigger piece, like a jacket or have like some kind of like crest or something different about it that kind of catches people's attention, or be a bigger size, like a plus size. So this set, I almost weeded it out a couple times just because it wasn't moving, and it finally sold for $25. So I'm happy about that. Now, Polo Ralph Lauren, again, another piece. I had this in my profit pile. I think it needed, when I picked it up, I knew that it needed some depilling, and I wanted to just make sure that I got that all taken care of. I think it ended up out in the garage because it needed that work and it was off season. So I found it, did the depilling, and as I was listing it, I realized there were holes in it. There was a hole in the cuff, and there was a hole, I think, on the back shoulder. And so the buyer had messaged me asking a question about something, and then she just said that it was for her son and that it looked like the repairs were fairly easy for her to do. And so she managed to pick that up for $26. And I was happy it still was able to go to someone. One of the Le Creuset sales that I had on Poshmark happened in the beginning of September. I do have one of these left. I think Mr. Pish Posh told me. We just decided to hold off on listing it because I think we'd saturated the market a little bit too much. We were listing them too close together, which was what I was afraid of initially. So the last one we listed actually took a little bit of time to sell, and not like some of the other ones that went really fast. So I think the people who collect or who know about this color had already bought one or already knew about it. So the last one we sold that was taking so long, I actually cross-posted it to Merkari to get a different audience, and that did work. It ended up selling over there, but that happened just like in the last week or two. So we have one more left, and I think we'll just wait a month or two and then we'll pop it on again. Okay, Crocs, any kind of Croc, especially sandals that have decoration, I usually pick up if they're in good shape. And I've sold these before, but these sold for $28. Then this is a denim jacket by Good American. And I had heard about this brand a while back as far as like a fairly good brand for jeans for resale. And I just had never come across it. I don't look at the jeans like every single thrift trip, but I had just never come across it myself. I had just heard other resellers talk about it, and I had a feeling it had kind of died down or dropped a little bit. But I figured a trucker jacket is always a popular classic kind of style, so it was worth a shot. And it sold on Posh for $30. Then again, a reminder to myself not to predict where something is going to sell. This is a vintage coffee mug. I've sold plenty of coffee mugs on Poshmark, but it just always surprises me when the vintage ones do. And it should just stop surprising me by now. And I just need to put as much vintage on Posh as I possibly can, because you just never know what people are going to pick up where. The pattern was called Nordic Hand Painted, designed by CJ Peterson. Anyway, I think I had sold this mug one other time in the past. I picked it up at a yard sale a few years back. Patagonia, this is a cinchilla. It's like a shaggy fleece jacket. When we first listed it, I think this came from our little honey hole at the that office that was selling people's estates, the county treasurer's office. Anyway, that's from past videos. And that's kind of how long we've had this. This got listed and there was really not a whole lot of interest in this. I think I redid the listings, like relisted them for this season, and this one sold for $36. And then here's that LL Bean flannel shirt jacket kind of thing. Pullover. That's what it is. It's a pullover flannel shirt that you saw me pick up at Goodwill, correct? Yeah, on one of my thrifting days. And it sold really fast on Posh for $32. Moving over to Etsy, I finally sold my cake thing. It's not really a cake thing. It's all different kinds of food things. So as you can see, it's got all these different levels and layers and stuff like that to it. So like a picnic carrier kind of thing. I finally got it listed, and then over on Etsy, it was getting a lot of attention. It was really big. And so people across the country were asking me about shipping prices and things like that. And so they, were just like, it's too expensive. Like the shipping was just as much as the cost of the food carrier. And I kept double checking and I kept looking, and even like UPS, FedEx, those were the best prices, right? I couldn't put UPS in as a like calculated. Etsy doesn't let you put them in like in their calculations, but I could have put it in as a flat rate if someone had followed through and said, yeah, definitely let's use UPS. So anyway, I finally sold it to someone I think a little bit closer, at least in the Midwest, and they didn't question the shipping price at all. And so I haven't heard anything, I think. Yeah, I haven't heard anything, so I think they were happy with it, and $49 is what that sold for. Look at these fun vintage shoes. I really do like coming across vintage shoes, especially like 30s and 40s, if they're still in good condition. Sometimes it's tricky, like with these, you couldn't see a size printed or it had faded or whatever. So I think I just did it based on measurements, or sometimes you can see a number, but you're not positive. I can't remember what the case was. I wasn't positive if that was the number I was supposed to be looking at, but in any case, they sold back then are very narrow. I think people's feet were more narrow back in the day. So it takes, just the right kind of person to be able to fit. So sold those for $79. And the other thing I was going to say is that when I do pick these up, they seem to be a little more undervalued by thrift stores because they just look old-fashioned and like a granny shoe or something like that, if they don't really quite know what they've got. Limoges, France, this was a hair receiver. Do you guys know what a hair receiver is? I'm sure most of you do. It is in two pieces like this with a lid. This was another item I moved over from Ruby Lane, and it sold for $26. A hair receiver is just something that would be kept on a vanity, and as you brush your hair, you clean off your comb or your brush, and you collect the hair into the hair receiver. Then I also sold this aluminum long tassel lariat chain. It could have been a belt, could have been a necklace, and that sold for $19. This was a California redwood. There was a sticker on the bottom, a live edge bud vase that sold for $22 on Etsy. Then check out this other vanity set piece that I sold for $89. The brand was Globe, and it's a hand mirror and a brush. And then this is the frame to a comb, like the handle to a comb. I just didn't have the comb as well. Nice price for this. These were in good condition. If you look at the mirror, there was a sticker on the bottom, and it said that it was 24 karat gold plated. And then it was just unusual. I couldn't find that many that had this cameo of like the dancing muses. And I just kind of made up a price. And so those sold for $89. Another vanity item. Sorry, I'm like sniffling, and I'm hoping I'm not getting sick, because the boys got sick right after our trip. And so the house has been kind of full of illness for the past week, and I thought I was going to avoid it, but hopefully this is just allergies or dust or something. I know, I'm fooling myself. So $22 for this beauty dust container by Avon. It had gotten so much attention on Etsy. I was like, someone just buy it. And anyway, I don't know why that bothered me so much, but I was like it must have been featured somewhere or something like that, because there's so many views and so many likes, and like nobody was buying it. So then finally it sold for $22. Now here's a fun little doll. It's called a topsy-turvy doll. Maybe you guys have seen them before. Leave me a comment down below if you've seen it. This was a Little Red Riding Hood version. So it's got grandma, and then it's got Little Red Riding Hood. You could flip the dress, and once you flip the dress, it looks like Little Red Riding Hood. And then this was a 3-in-1, because if you took off Granny's little hood or bonnet, come on, you also got the wolf. So the wolf was like at the back of her head. So you could tell the whole story with this one doll if you wanted to. So kind of crazy. And then I have a theory. There's a Facebook page that I follow that is about vintage, and I think it was one of those. But anyway, they'll just feature stuff from the past, and one day they featured these topsy-turvy dolls, and specifically the Little Red Riding Hood one. And so all the comments were so interesting about people, oh, I forgot about that, I need to look for one, da-da-da. And like, I didn't advertise mine, but mine sold like the next day after that post was out. So I think people just went looking on Etsy or on Google themselves to see if they could pick one up. That's my theory anyway. Then I sold a Clyban mug for $20. I think there's just a couple of the Clyban mugs left. Sold this stack of bracelets, the Bakelite bracelets. I already had the brown ones. I think I had them listed separately, and they weren't selling. And then I found the two yellow ones, and I thought, that would make a nice little stack. So, and as you can see, there's 3 different bracelets. The little skinny flat ones are technically called spacers. You can put them between thicker, like wide carved bangles on your wrist to kind of break up the fun, like statement pieces that you have on your arm. And they call it a stack. But anyway, I just sold all 5 of those together, and that sold for $46. Then over on the pattern shop, I'll just give you the highlights of what sold in the patterns. A lot of just basic bread and butters for like $12 and things like that. But here's a sampling, the Simplicity men and, father-son kind of outfit one, $14 for that. This Vogue pattern sold for $15, evening gown style. The 80s, oh, so 80s. This sold for $11. It's just a butterick and it's a smaller size, but this dress totally reminds me of a dress I had, although mine didn't have this big bow because I wasn't into frilly stuff like that. But it had the low back in the back of it. And I wore it to my brother's graduation, which was held outside in like June in New York. And he was valedictorian. He was giving a speech. And we sat there through the whole ceremony. And I got the worst sunburn on my back of my life. So hopefully that doesn't like come back to bite me in the future. But anyway, I just thought that was funny. Reminded me of that. Just a Calvin Klein, just $13 for this one. It's just kind of, you know, the business ones do okay, but they're not like super, super high prices. The Helston Skimp, just a fun little pattern from the 70s. That was a size 10 and it sold for $16. And last up were these Y2K skirts by Vogue, size 8, 10, 12, sold for $18. Look at the slit on that thing. Woo. And the little asymmetrical look going on. So funny. Okay. And then over on Merkari, you know, I still never know what I'm going to do with Merkari. I keep it because sometimes there's things like health and beauty or something like that, or perfumes that are used that I can't put on eBay. And I just kind of keep it for that. And like once a month I get a sale of something else. So I'm like, I don't put a lot of work into it. Every once in a while I'll cross-post some stuff over to it. And, you know, probably if I was more active, I would make more sales, but it's fine. Anyway, these sold for $25.72, this pair of Skechers that I think I got at a thrift store and I paid like $3 or something like that. Okay, popping in here just real quick to give my usual end to a what sold video as far as leaving me a comment down below. How's your reselling going? You can talk about September, you can talk about October, you can share anything reselling related, that like things you found at the thrift store or anything like that. I love to read the comments, so I'm happy to hear what's going on with you guys. And I thought I would just kind of hopefully ease back into making videos, you know, with a what sold video. I may do a video that addresses reselling when you just don't feel like it. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's too depressing of a video to make, but sometimes there's strategies, or we can all brainstorm together about how to get through some bad weeks, right? Okay, I will talk to you guys soon, and stay healthy, everyone.